Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being so patient with me this past week. I'm really sorry that I had to miss, and I'm missing all your faces, but I want to go ahead and get into Roman clothing so that we can go ahead and start doing some fun stuff, such as analyzing the film Gladiator, which will begin on Tuesday. So we're going to go ahead and get started in ancient Rome, and this is ranging from the years 800 BC to 400 AD. So, when we look at Roman clothing, we see a huge emphasis on status. Similar to what we see today, a lot of what is worn defines certain statuses, rank, office, or authority. It was important to them to make clear these distinctions through what they wore. While we see a lot of women doing the weaving at home in ancient Greece, this is not as common in Rome. There's actually large estates similar to factories that produce the majority of the cloth. If you're extremely high status, it was possible you had workers at home that would produce your fabric, but a ready-to-wear concept was a little bit more popular. The fabrics that we did see being created are wool. This is a major fiber during this era, though we also see cotton, linen, and silk. You'd have to be of really high class to be able to afford silk as it's imported and a blended weave. The weave of these fabrics, where it was really light in Egypt, they could kind of vary in ancient Rome in their densities. So we could see a more solid, durable fabric or very gauzy, flowing fabric. Here are some examples of some discovered, preserved fabrics from that period. Some embroidery there on the far right. All right, the item of clothing we all know and love, thanks to our fraternities. This is a basic garment or silhouette for men of status and those of citizenship. Slaves and foreigners were prohibited from wearing togas. This is basically a wrapped garment placed over a tunica. There were exceptions for women wearing this garment when they were divorced on the grounds of adultery. And this was to make it very plain to society that her infidelity caused the demise of her marriage. She is required to wear it exclusively, and this is a sense of shaming her publicly. We have a couple different types of togas that helped further emphasize distinctions. The toga pura here is made of plain, undecorated wool, and it was worn after a male citizen turned 16. It would be very simple, typically white. All right, the toga candida. This toga is worn by men running for office, and this is where we get the term candidate. So this is the same silhouette as the toga pura, but it was a brighter white and made of much finer fabrics that would distinguish them. We see the toga praexta, and this toga has a purple border that was about 2 to 3 inches wide. It was worn by the young sons and on rare occasions daughters of nobility, adult magistrates, and high priests. So that large purple border is what's identifying the status and what this toga means for that person. The toga pulla is usually made of a black or darker color to implicate a citizen was in mourning for a loved one. And then the toga picta. This toga is exclusively purple with gold embroidery, and it's assigned for special occasions to victorious generals or other persons who distinguished themselves in some way. So it's an honorary toga, one for celebration and praise, not an everyday toga. We're going to go ahead and get into some women's wear. This is the stola, and the majority of written resources that we have from this period indicate that this was the major garment for women. It was reserved for free married women, and its decoration and fabric could notate status. It's a long pleated dress worn over a tunica, which we'll describe in the next slide. It was typically sleeveless, but we do see some examples of it having short or long sleeves. The sleeves, if they were there, could belong to the tunica, so worn underneath in a layer, or the stola as part of the outer layer. Here are some other examples of statues and illustrations of women wearing these garments. This is the tunica, and it's the Roman equivalent of the shorter Greek chiton. They ended around the knee, and they were a short-sleeved T shape. They served as an underclothing or nightwear for upper-class men, and then if you were of lower class, this would typically be your regular streetwear. All right, here we have the subligar, and this is the parallel to the Greek perizoma. It's worn as sportswear and or an undergarment, and it's similar to a loincloth. The female version of this garment was the subligaria, so adding the A as that feminine element. Okay. This is the painula. This is heavy or leather, a leather cloak, and it's semicircular in shape and was pinned in the front, probably with a fibula or a Roman equivalent of a fibula, and it also had a hood. So this would be for outerwear and traveling, as it's giving you versatile coverage. The lacerna are rectangular cloaks with rounded corners and a hood. I'm not going to quiz you too much on these cloaks, as we don't really see them as much in Gladiator, and there's such a variety, and it's hard to see with all of these different draperies. And then here's the burris, and this is similar in shape to a contemporary poncho with a hood, though. As you can see, it's not split up the center as the painula was. This is the plaudimentum, and this cloak was worn exclusively by generals or emperors and could be either white or purple. So once again, we see that expensive dye, the purple dye made from the small shellfish. This is the palla, and this is a garment worn by women. It's a draped shawl that was casually pulled across the shoulder and head, similar to a veil. We will see a lot of these styled in Gladiator. It's very common, very popular to see this depicted as a trait of elegance. Okay, there is some transition of hair in the Roman period, especially for women. In the earlier height of Rome, we see women's hair worn in soft curls and waves, similar to what we see here on the right. These more gentle waves. And then when we get into the later height of Rome, it evolves into this intricate structural shape that were built with curls, braids, and inserts of artificial hair, which in this sense would not be plastic hair as we see today. It would be probably purchased hair from lower class women or slaves or foreigners. Prisoners of war. We see the fillet on this top right, second from right top. So you can see that's also kind of carried on into the earlier height of Rome. We see this kind of parallel to the ancient Greeks. We also, to go back, we also see blonde hair. So it was common to bleach or wear wigs from the hair of Northern European captives. After becoming married, a woman would have a distinct hairstyle that was called the tutulus, and this is that bottom left one. Men's hair was short and cut by a barber. And typically, if a man wanted to appear younger than their age, they would occasionally dye their hair, probably to that blonde. All right. As far as footwear goes, we do see a lot of sandals, as you might have predicted. We kind of see some leather-footed boots, and slipper-like shoes that reach the ankle were also worn. Here are some remaining artifacts. There are some with toes, as we didn't really see as much in the ancient Greek period. Those typically had their toes shown. These we see a variety. Cosmetics were worn by both men and women. Women would typically whiten their skin with a lead paste, tint their lips with henna, and darken their eyebrows. Sometimes apply blush, and occasionally eyeshadows. Fashionable men would use cream blush and conceal their blemishes with a lead paste. And then we also are very aware that there were perfumes that were very prevalent in this culture. It's very theatrical makeup. It's not trying to look natural. It's apparent when somebody's wearing a makeup, which likely would signify wealth as well. So there's an emphasis. We can see this. She can afford to dress up, be made up, and kind of look ridiculous, but it states something. We see a lot of similarities in Greek armor with Roman armor as well. Romans did, however, adopt a form of trousers to wear under their armor in cold weather. These would have not been connected at the crotch like contemporary pants, and this is going to continue as we progress into the medieval period. We don't really see pants become attached at the crotch seam until much later. Here we see some examples of Roman cuirasses, similar to those ones we saw in the ancient Greece. Okay, so back into some other cloaks. This is the abola, and this is a folded rectangular cloak worn by officers. It's pinned and fastened on the right shoulder, so very specifically placed pinning, which is stating what that person is. And then this is the sagum. It's similar to the abola. It's a little bit shorter, and it's a singular layer of thick wool, most often red. Once again, I'm not going to quiz you on these two or most of the cloaks, just as it's so hard to identify which one is what. They're very subtle differences. Okay, we're not going to watch
Picture
this
a citizen
video
of the Roman Empire,
right
you
now,
probably imagine.
but I will post the link on Blackboard so that if you wish to watch, you can. If not, I'm not going to quiz you on this, but it does help kind of explain some other things that might make it a little bit more clear. It's about 10 minutes long. All right. We're going to begin our first film analyzing costumes, so please review and have your notes ready when watching for reference. We're going to explore what the aesthetics of the costume designer and director deemed important to communicate that period and character. And so what this means is what I said earlier in last class is things may not be completely period accurate, and this is really to achieve something of a contemporary aesthetic pleasure or to emphasize something about the character. So our discussion will include you notating differences and why they're there, why you would think that they're there, how accurate the costumes are, and how successful you believe the design to be. This film will focus majorly on ancient Roman garments, so particularly look at the slides we just went over before class next Tuesday. In your responses, these are going to be 1 page single spaced or 2 pages double spaced. They are kind of a train of thought for you. They do not have to be formatted perfectly. I'm not looking for cited sources. I'm not looking for correct spelling or punctuation. Mostly I want to hear what your thoughts are and those poured out on a paper. I do, however, want to emphasize, and I saw this a lot last semester, and this is part of me learning as a professor. I want you to use the terms we have learned, but I don't need you to describe what those terms are for me. I know what they are. I just want you to use proper terminology when speaking about a garment. I also don't want a summary of the movie. We were all there, we were watching the same movie. I want this to be an opportunity for just purely discussion and analysis on an individual basis. It's really important that you push yourself. There is no right answer, there is no wrong answer unless you take somebody else's work. I do not appreciate that. So please just be open to having a conversation with yourself about what you're seeing. Enjoy the movie, enjoy the story, and just take some notes about what kind of sticks out to you. What do you find beautiful? What do you think that says about the character? Take some time on your own to kind of look at the subtleties, see if there's some interviews with the costume designer, etc. I'll go over this again in class just to make sure it's clear. If you do have questions, please reach out to me. Thank you guys once again for being patient with me this week. It's been rough, but I'm grateful that I have this class. I'm really excited to continue to explore with you guys. I hope you've had a great weekend. Thank you so much.